Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 573 of the Dead Robot Society. I'm Terry Mixon. Joining me, Paul E. Cooley. It feels like we just talked, man.
It feels like we did just talk. Like maybe something just went on and everything else. Or you know what it is? We didn't shower and we didn't change clothes.
Wait a minute. We're supposed to do these things?
It's been a week and we haven't done either of those. That's kind of frightening.
Oh, God, that's gross.
It's disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself. I should be ashamed of myself.
You know, if you folks could smell us on the internet, you wouldn't come back.
Oh, be very thankful there's no such thing as smell-o-vision. They did that in Futurama. It does not work out well for anyone. Anyone.
Yeah, don't do it, folks.
You just haven't watched enough Futurama. That is your problem. That is your exact problem.
I've watched some, so at least I've watched more of it than Babylon 5.
They have that episode where they make a smelloscope, which is a telescope where they sniff planets. Yeah, it's so bad. It's so bad. I love it. Now with smell-o-vision. I have not been working on smell-o-vision. I've been working on signal decay.
Well, that's what you said when we recorded the intro mere minutes ago for last week's episode.
That was for last week's episode. This is for this week's episode. Ignore the temporal incongruities.
The temporal incongruity here, folks, is that because we're going to go ahead and miss a week, but we've got things in the can that we've already recorded episode-wise, we get to record two intros during the same week. So we literally just did the previous intro. So what's changed between now and last week? Nothing. Not a damn thing.
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. So if you watched last week's episode, you pretty much got where we are. But, you know, that's aside the point. Why did we even do an intro if this was going to be the case? It was just going to be this boring. Was it just to hear you do a clumsy segue?
I don't do clumsy segues. This is just you thinking that.
Oh, my God. Do you ever listen to yourself talk?
Apparently, you think I'm self-conscious about it. I am not.
Okay, I got nothing.
You shouldn't have anything.
I can't even get you to watch or listen to our own damn show, let alone anything else.
I was there. Who needs to watch it?
So that next week you remember what you said last week.
You're supposed to take notes.
Yes, you're supposed to take notes. Why is this all on me? My God.
I like, folks, my personal favorite as far as doing intros is when Paul says, okay, here's the title. And I'm like, what does that even mean? What did we talk about? And you're like, oh, no.
That rarely happens. It didn't happen today. It does not happen for this episode, and it's not happening for next week's episode. So bite me.
It's still funny.
Yeah, screw you, buddy. Screw you.
You know, somebody wants to. It's a big world.
On that note, what the hell are we talking about today anyway?
Today, we are going to talk about something that I lack.
You lack?
I lack.
You lack a bikini body.
That's the episode we're talking about today, folks. Bikini bodies.
We're talking about bikini bodies on DRS.
Well, why not?
Why? Like, we are experts on bikini bodies. We've never had bikini bodies, personally.
More like mankini bodies.
Not even, oh my God, mankini. Whoa.
Borat.
Whoa, God. No, just no.
I didn't go down this way willingly, folks. Paul dragged me kicking and screaming.
I have several problems with how you worded that sentence, but never mind that. That's not important right now. What's important
really
is you have
talking about
me for life with an image of you in a mankini. Okay.
So okay? One of these episodes, you're going to turn the video on, and that's what you're going to see.
David Wood, help me. David Wood, you're my only hope.
I think you already put your head on one of those. I think this may have already happened.
Your turn, buddy. It's your turn. It's your turn to be lampooned. I might actually take the time to edit the YouTube video to shove that in there.
Insert picture here.
Why don't we get back to what we were saying about today's topic?
Why do we do these intros? Because they're fun. That's why.
Well, they're funny for us anyway. When you get to the goddamn point.
Subtlety. That's what we're going to talk about.
Sorry, I can't hear you. What'd you say?
Subtlety.
Subtlety. Well, this should be fun.
In a way, I agree that I don't have a whole lot of subtlety in me. If I have an idea, I pretty much trot that sucker right out.
Premature idealization. All right, let's get to the up. It's a very interesting idea. I don't know how people who write alternate realities and cross-dimensional shift and do all that other shit keep stuff straight. How in the hell did you manage that?
I managed it by keeping it fairly simple and linear and keeping an eye on what the differences between the two were.
Okay. Wow. That's all I can say is wow.
But that kind of fits into what I want to talk about today.
Oh God, you actually have a topic?
I do. This is, you're going to think this is utterly, completely, and bewilderingly weird, but I saw a flashback and liked it.
Oh my God.
I know, right? I've been watching The Witcher.
Okay.
And I was in the middle of episode 4 when I suddenly realized that I've been watching a flashback scene for the entire series thus far. But it was so well done, I had no idea what I was looking at until all the pieces fell into place.
Okay.
There were 2 separate threads going through the story, and I didn't realize they were separated by about 20 years. Okay. Or maybe a little bit less than 20 years.
Flipping back and forth between the two?
Yeah, it was flipping back and forth between the two, and you couldn't tell. They could have been happening simultaneously until suddenly they couldn't have been.
Interesting.
And then you're like, oh, wait a minute. I know that guy. How did he get there?
You had mentioned something about that. My father had mentioned the fact that he had no idea what the fuck was going on. You both mentioned that same thing, and now that you see all the pieces together, you're suddenly like, oh! So how many episodes did it take to reach that moment?
I was in episode 4 when it happened. When the creators dropped all the pieces there that made it apparent that that's what that was. The reveal happened.
Okay.
If you were paying attention, the reveal happened. If you were just, eye candying it, you may have missed it until episode 5.
Interesting. Okay, so what did you like about this?
The subtlety. That's really what I want to talk about today is doing subtle in writing, because the way the creators and the filmmakers did this, it was so subtle that you didn't realize it was there as they were building it up brick by brick, putting all the pieces there so that when the reveal happened, everything was in place and you suddenly went, oh shit.
Okay. So how was that done exactly?
I don't want to get too deeply into spoilery stuff for The Witcher for those that are watching it.
Fair enough.
But what they did,
in general terms,
the 2 separate timelines were completely isolated from each other. Although some appearances were made, some commentary was made that made you think they might be connected. And I am not, as of yet, convinced that a third timeline wasn't still a different piece of it. It's not like they put dates on these things. So there's another sequence of events that have already collided inside the story where you're going, where did she come from? Her storyline, now that I know that 2 of them were separated by 15 years or though, was hers earlier? Was hers later? I think hers was actually earlier. So I think there's actually 3 timelines that are coming together in this story, but I haven't seen the confirmation yet.
Okay, so this sounds like you're actually confused.
I was confused for the very first few episodes, and I suspect I'm not alone.
According to my father, you're not.
It's like a magician doing things with misdirection. What the creators did is they had the flashy show going on, and they left the subtle details right there for you to see them, knowing that you wouldn't.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I guess that goes along with the landmine, my landmine analogies for where I kind of put stuff and just leave it hanging and then go back to it. And when like you've done this before too, when you go back to it, you look like a fucking genius. But if you purposely laid it down, then you really have some options about just how much you want to get the reader to wonder about it.
Sometimes we're subtle and we lay a marker. Other times we're drunken sailors rambling down the street of our story, dropping pieces of everything along the way. And sometimes it's hard to tell which one is which.
I suddenly had a vision of you marching down the street with all these crumbles of syllables and everything else, leading a herd of goats with RPGs.
Yes.
Yuda, damn it.
That's exactly what I was doing. And I had a little flute, so I was luring them along.
The Pied Piper of plot doom.
That's it. I have now been officially been labeled the Pied Piper of plot doom. Don't think I'm not going to use that either. I'm going to put that as a quote somewhere.
Kevin, she kind of hold together. We're missing too many syllables.
It's like I drove past a Kia Soul that was broken down on the side of the road this morning. And I said, I wonder what happened to the hamsters.
I thought you were going to make some kind of religious joke.
That maybe it was soulless?
Oh, dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I was expecting a dad joke. The hamsters was pretty close. Things I just cannot expect from you.
So, Paul, what I want to know from you is you're a lot more subtle than I am. I fully admit that. I'm not a subtle person. When I'm writing a story, it's all out there on display. How do you go ahead and go about the process of fooling your readers without them realize you're pulling the wool over their eyes?
That's really kind of tough.
I know, right?
It's tough to explain. It just kind of really depends on the situation. If the old gun analogy, right? Maybe it's not a gun. Maybe it's a kitchen knife that's sitting next to the cutting board. It's very subtle, but guess what? When we're there and they grab that knife, we're like, oh yeah, that knife is there. Simple stuff like that. When you're going across plots, however, or you're coming back from a long way off to go back and revisit that landmine or plot device, whatever it is you've left around, like Terry, he just kind of drizzles them all over the place. When I intend for it to be there so readers have an idea what's coming next, or so that when we get to the reveal, they're not calling me a bastard for not giving them all the information and doing a Deus Ex Machina.
I've read stories like that, and
I'm
they're
not even
very
going to get in.
unsatisfying.
I'm not even going to get into why that was funny.
Do it.
I'm not even going to get into why that's funny. If you put it down intentionally, you have to make the decision of how much detail you're going to give it. Like I've said before, if it's something I want the reader to remember, I'm going to give it more detail than I otherwise would. And especially if it's useful for understanding another concept later, it's something you kind of have to plant. I got called on the End of Destruction because something was kind of shown doing something at the end. And I had several readers send me emails going, dude, you left a plot hole. Like, actually, no, I didn't leave a plot hole. And yeah, it's one of those things I had to leave there on purpose because I needed it for something else. Several people paid attention to that. Hey, what about that thing? Well, guess what? It's hanging out there. They've been wondering. I've kept them for almost 2 books, waiting for what was in, waiting to find out what is in this thing. So it's going to be kind of fun when they read Trident. But that was something I had to consciously put there, and I put it there in the first book on purpose because I meant to get around to it. And on purpose, I didn't get around to it because I needed to get out of the first plot before we started this next one. So yeah, the intentional stuff, you drop it and you either make it very central to a scene or something along those lines, even if it's not involved in the conflict, and you just move on. You want to leave it there if it's a plot for a sequel or something along those lines, or something for the reveal. Then you want to draw some. I think you want to draw some attention to it. Subtlety is great, except there's the point where you like my dad, same way with this Witcher. You struggled through and kept going. My dad stopped watching. So
I think you missed
like
out on that. If you kept watching, it would all start to make sense.
Right. He's 78. He doesn't have time for that shit. I'm just saying. So
sometimes you can get subtle and leave something hanging by accident.
Yes.
During the editing process. Yes. And I'm thinking of a movie here. I'm thinking of Blade Runner, as a matter of fact. In the movie, they mentioned the first one.
The original. One with narration?
Did it have narration? It's been so long since I've seen it.
The movie, the studio version is, see, that's why we're confused. There's like 10 final cuts of the goddamn thing.
I saw it in the theater, so I'm talking about the one I saw in the theater.
Okay, that is the fucked version. That's the one where they used the narration where it was more noirish.
Yes, it was very noirish.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah, but that version sucks.
I think the remake the sequel sucked.
Haven't seen it.
You haven't missed much. I will get into that in a moment since we brought the subject up. But where I was going with this is in that movie, they mentioned that there were 6 replicants on the loose. They dealt with 5 of them. And somewhere along the way during the editing process, they either didn't correct it to being 5 or they cut one of the replicants out.
Whoops.
They used that plot hole, I believe,
in the sequel,
but it was not intentional. I feel utterly and completely confident.
Hey, we need to tug on this a little bit. Oh, there's a whole nother story there. Nice. Okay.
The problem with the sequel, in a word, was it was too slow. The action took place. Everything seemed to take twice as long to accomplish in a scene as it should have. It dragged like nobody's business. And the music was hugely loud. Like hurt your ears loud. And I'm not sure if that was the theater or the movie itself.
Hard to tell these days. I have to turn off my hearing aids 9 times out of 10 when I go into a theater these days.
But you can take advantage of your own screw-ups to find plot holes that you can take advantage of in later stories. If you look back and go, oh yeah, what did I do with that thing? Oops, I kind of left that hanging. I guess I should do something with that.
Well, those are the overt ones. The subtle ones would be it's a piece I cut from Derelict. I think. I can't even remember now. No, I think it was in the first. I think it is in the first book, where there's hints about the fact that somebody's been messing around with biological AIs, and then I drop it. We say that at the very beginning, and then we drop it and move the hell on.
I did something similar to that in one of my earlier books. I went ahead and had a recording of a historical transmission. It's 500 and some odd years out of date. It's historic. Nothing to do with the characters. They found it in the computers, and it was important to the plot. As part of the side of it, they saw someone in the video that's going to be a character in another series that I'm writing. I intentionally placed that character there in the circumstances that I wanted so that I would have the end game for the novels that I'm going to be writing.
Okay.
I planned that ahead of time, and people that were reading through almost certainly won't remember that character. But it's going to be important. There's going to be a quiz.
If you can see far enough ahead in the series, like I know where the ending is of Derelict. I know what needs to happen in the last book. Therefore, I have to line up all the pieces so they'll be there for the last book. And there's a few other pieces that have yet to be moved on the board, which will have to be done in the first first quarter of the next book. But if you can see far enough ahead, then you can start planning for it and just make notes to yourself, or this is a crazy idea, and as the plot goes, you go back and you look at those things and go, wait a minute, that I can use that here. We've already established it in the story. And that way you basically are just leading them along. It's not along the lines of somebody smashing or just finding a fire extinguisher at the right moment. It's not that kind of garbage. You set the stuff up.
Can you imagine a series of short stories about somebody doing something with a fire extinguisher, and then another story where somebody picks up said fire extinguisher from wherever the first story left it and moved it to another place, and then another one moves it to a third one, and then suddenly it's important in the bigger story because of all these little stories that got the fire extinguisher to where it needed to be?
That's very much like the play Noises Off. They made a pretty good movie out of it. In some ways, the movie's better than the play because it's got a bunch of great people in it. It was one of the last movies Christopher Reeves made. Anyway, it's sardines. There's a plate of sardines that is constantly moving everywhere throughout the play. And also the telephone is constantly moving throughout the play. It's really hard to describe, but you just kind of have to see it. It's worth it. John Ritter's in it, Christopher Reeves, Michael Caine, Carol Burnett. I said some old codger you'll recognize whose name it escapes me completely. It's a lot of really great characters, a lot of really great actors, and it's a damn funny play, funny movie.
There is, I don't know if I'm remembering the right Bond, but it had Pierce Brosnan in it, and I think it was GoldenEye. And Q had given him a pen that was explosives. So
yes,
the key was you click the pen, 5 seconds later, the detonator is armed. And who gets their hands on it? A programmer that goes click, 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 and everybody's like eyes are glued on this guy.
Set it up. They made it very apparent that it was a really annoying effing habit of his. They brought attention to the habit twice, and then the third time it killed him.
I am invincible.
It's perfect. Absolutely perfect. That's one of those things where you're like, okay, I want to, you have that scene in your mind where you want that thing to happen. You just want it to happen. Wouldn't it be funny if, what do we have to do to make that happen? All right, well, I got to lay this down here. Oh, if I want to make that scene happen, I need to go back and plant this.
And there, I think you've touched on the key to subtlety. You have to see the end game so that you can deftly manipulate the pieces parts that have to be manipulated to bring about the circumstances you need.
And even for us pantsers, we discover those as we go along.
Where the magic happens is in editing.
Yes, but quite often I find those moments before I ever go to the editing because I'm writing and I know that it needs to be there. So just boom.
I'm a very linear guy, so I start at the beginning of what I think the story is. So 2/3 of the way through the story, I'll make a note to myself, oh, go back and plant the seeds for this during the editing process.
Right. John Clark Pratt, who was one of my college professors, he said no story starts at the beginning.
He's a liar, a damn liar.
And he meant that in two ways, really. He meant it in two ways. He meant to it that there's always a backstory to characters, but more importantly, he said, whatever you write as your first sentence is not going to be necessarily the first sentence you have when you're done.
Well,
Because
I certainly violate that shit because like 90% of the times the story starts right where I started it.
and that's good for you. For me, like with Closet Treats, I found myself where I'd written basically 20,000 words that were not the beginning of the book. And that same kind of thing happened with Derelict to a certain degree. So yeah, that happens to me with Garaga as well and everything else. It just at some point I realized that I'm in the middle and I'm not the beginning. And I need to go right the beginning to get to this middle.
And having said that the key is subtlety, sometimes it's not that you realize late that you have to do something. Sometimes you've been ham-handed in the way that you write, the way something works in a draft, and the editing process is going back and smoothing out the rough edges to
Yes.
conceal the parts that you need to conceal.
Yeah, you can't have the axe, well, unless you're writing comedy, you can't have the axe just hanging over the guy's head, you know? It needs to be a little more subtle than that. Just a little. Unless you're writing a Terry Mixon book, and then that's exactly the way it's supposed to go.
Aliens.
I just keep imagining a character wandering around, and every time they need something, they can reach into a magic portal and pull something out. The problem is things get screwed up through the magic portal, and he doesn't know what he's going to pull out.
Totally random. I like it.
So he goes for your fire extinguisher and he pulls out a fish.
And then he has to make it work.
And so basically, it's like everything he needs is a component of what he was asking for.
I need a fish. He gets a can of clam chowder.
There you go. Exactly. Or he gets a frying pan. Well, guess what? The fire extinguisher was going to be used to put out the fire that was in the frying pan that was cooking the fish. That was the logic behind why he got what he got. So he needed this component to make the story work, and it just appeared. That sounds like a total clusterfuck. Everybody should write that story.
There should be an anthology.
Yeah, but not produced by me, and not by you either.
No, not by me. I'm too busy doing other things.
Hails.
We've learned our lesson.
Oof. I wasn't even here for that disaster. That's just, I remember all the words of warning. Never again.
With Vellum, it would probably be a lot easier, but managing all those cats is probably a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah, no, thank you. I know how bad it is to manage me. I can't imagine managing me. Me managing me.
That's called self-control.
Oh, I don't have any of that. That flew out the window a
Self-discipline.
long time ago. So did that. We don't have that. I have Kitty discipline. He comes over here and, crawls all over the chair and knocks all my papers off and that kind of thing. Is that Kitty discipline?
No.
No?
No. Here's the thing. Cats can't discipline you. Sorry. Doesn't work that way. They're too independent. They don't care about what you do.
Oh, I disagree. I totally disagree with every damn word you just said. Oh my God. They're needy, furry, cute demons from hell. That's what they are.
It's true.
And you just keep having more of them.
I have as many as come my way.
God, so many things wrong with you. Ugh. So, perfect example. We need an explosive later on. What do we got lying around the house? Lots and lots of ammonia from kitty litter.
There's probably a good reason why we don't have, the guy that was making meth in that TV series, working around the house.
Oh, why is that?
Because, no telling what he'd blow up. Breaking Bad, that's what it was.
Breaking Bad. Yeah, you'll have to be more specific as to which character was going to blow shit up. There's like a long list of them.
For whatever reason, I could totally see, replacing the main character in Breaking Bad with Dave Robeson. I think he could fill that role perfectly.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely correct. I think there's a lot of roles like that Dave Robeson could fill.
Why aren't we seeing more Dave Robeson on TV?
I
That's
don't
all I
know.
got to ask.
I don't know. Dave, why aren't you on TV? Come on. Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the comments. Anyway, we were back to subtlety or something. We kind of jumped the shark there for a minute.
We kind of went, swerving off the street a little bit, ran over a couple of mailboxes, took out some trash cans.
Mind that bush. Oh, yeah, and the street lamp.
Have you ever, when you're just sitting down and doing world creation, decided you needed to have something subtle just inside the setting that was going to play a role in what's going on? Let's use Friday the 13th, the TV series, as an example.
Okay.
Not very subtle. The entire world has a hidden occult aspect of it, that they're going and trying to retrieve things that were in the dead father, dead grandfather's shop that have all these bad consequences that go with them. So it was very episodic of retrieving said bad items one at a time.
Okay.
And so that's a setting that's different than normal world, but you can take a setting like that and put subtle aspects to it that influence even people that aren't part of the occult.
Such as?
Maybe the baker that lives next door to the shop. What kind of things might be going on with their dough?
What about graffiti on the walls?
Ooh, comes to life. I see a cover of the street right there.
Yeah, something exactly like that. Yeah, there's kind of art to putting those pieces in there. I'll put stuff where I'll have a character walk by something that may look like a Garaga symbol and say nothing about it. I'll draw attention to it and then it's gone. Did anybody catch it? No idea. We'll see. But things like that, or if you want to say like doing Watchmen, one of the first things they do, if I remember correctly, is make sure it's 1970 whatever, and that Nixon hasn't been impeached, and that we won Vietnam, and all this other stuff. They established that so fast in the first few minutes just by showing you newspaper clippings that I don't really need to say much.
That's pretty much what you have to do if you're going to have a diverging setting like that.
Yeah, if it's going to be, alternate reality or timelines or something like that, leaving postcards or billboards or election posters or anything with a date, if you're trying to draw attention to that, I think it's really good to establish early on.
So how would something like the man from High Castle fit into that?
Oh, God. We know immediately this is not our reality within about 2 seconds, at least in the book. In the book, it's pretty damn clear it's not our reality. It's Philip K. Dick just basically grabs you by his short hairs and says, "Look at this. This is 1945. Does this look right to you?" No. None of this shit looks right.
There's a number of authors that write alternate reality, alternate history type stories.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading years ago a book by Eric Flint called 1812. And in the book, the main character is Sam Houston.
Okay.
At least I think it was. It's been so long now. But the character was screwed up in history by taking an arrow that screwed him up. Either a shot or a bow shot. I can't remember which. And the single distance, the single change in history was that shot missed.
Oh.
And the alternate history proceeded from there of what could have happened.
Just like if Archduke Ferdinand hadn't been shot.
Something like that. A very subtle change that even somebody, especially somebody that's not familiar with history, wouldn't know that thing had ever happened to begin with. But then you start going, what if? Now that we've got that out of the way, how would events slowly and very subtly start shifting away from the actual historical events to the point to where you're in a different timeline, and it's bloody obvious to anybody that looks.
So that's kind of how steampunk works in a way, I guess. It's like we discovered steam and therefore nobody really ever moved on from it because it worked, and there have been other subtleties or whatever, but the technology is still the technology is still the technology. It changes and warps, but we still have the same thing. We have mostly things based on electricity of some sort and steam power. It's kind of the way it goes. Well, how would that happen? It kind of appeared in the 1700s rather than appearing in the 1800s. And coal never got a foothold. That's how it happens.
There's a story by Harry Turtledove, who's real huge in alternate history, called The Technicolor Time Machine. And in it, a scientist devises a time machine, but the only way he can finance work on it is to sell it to the movie industry. They decide that their big project is going back and filming the Vikings discovering America.
And what did the Vikings think about all this?
They were somewhat nonplussed by the entire deal, let me tell you this. But they go back with a film crew to go ahead and film it, and they find that nothing's happening. Nobody's really interested in doing that. So they find someone that they can go ahead and pay to go ahead and do this. And so they set up this chain of events that leads to the discovery of Vinland. And they find out at the end of this novel that that person, his real name was the one that discovered Vinland.
Yes, and which brings up the point.
Their action in going back was the precipitating event that caused what they went back to investigate.
Oh, God, I hate time travel.
They failed to get the movie ready on time. They had a deadline. They failed to get the movie ready on time, and the producers, he's about to have to go ahead and admit to the bankruptcy court that he's got no money, and a future version of him shows up with the completed movie.
Hitchhiker's Guide goes after this too.
And says, we went back in time to a desert island and we finished the processing on this movie. You have to actually pay the people that went back in time to do this. No to this time bullshit of saying, oh, they were only gone for like one day. They were there for months working on this bullshit. And then he produces a piece of paper and hands it to himself that has a drawing in it that explains how the time loop worked, which he then puts in his wallet. And later on in the movie, he goes back in time to deliver the finished movie and hands it to himself. And you're suddenly sitting there going, when did this piece of paper get drawn on? We've seen it from the moment it was introduced all the way through to the moment it was introduced, and no one ever touched it with a pen. And they make comment in the movie, and they're like, in the book, and they're like, I don't know where that happened. It's actually an excellent book if you want to be it's funny. It's funny as hell.
It sounds hilarious. That's the problem with the whole time travel thing, like Terminator. It made me fuck that franchise. Fuck that franchise. Because basically they've turned it into a multiverse of multiverses. It's gone insane. I can't keep track of it anymore.
Oh, I just ignore all of them except Genesis.
Oh, dear Christ. Anyway, so you just proved you have no class or sanity.
I thought that was a fun one.
I rest my case.
I haven't seen the most recent one.
I haven't either.
So I have no idea how it did, but I seem to remember in the box office it did terribly.
Yeah, it probably did. Anyway, as I was saying, time travel is really tough to keep track of. It's just like in the Klein's book where they first get the machine that they're messing with. You have alternate selves crossing into one another.
It's because it's so subtle they don't realize it. They had one of the characters, I think the novel was called Doors, or
I can't
Maybe not.
remember.
They call the thing a doorway. That's what they call those doors that lead from place to place. They didn't realize they were tapping into alternate realities.
No,
They
they had
thought
no
they were
clue.
doing point-to-point transfer on the same planet.
Exactly.
But
So
they
when
had
the
little
shit
subtle
hits the
things.
fan,
They had little subtle things like one of the characters ranting and raving that somebody had pranked him by moving his office across the hall.
yeah, yeah. And then there was hair color, and then there was eye color,
And then it got worse, and
then
it
it
got
got worse.
worse, and it got worse.
Then it got somebody was always wearing a different watch. Then it got rings were missing. Then it got people had never met or married. It got it just whoa! It went
Well,
way sideways.
I think it actually started out with the one where they never got married.
Yeah, maybe.
That was
I
the
can't remember.
inciting incident
I can't remember.
because they had to hire the guy to go find out what was going on in the place because he showed up his own house. His wife didn't recognize him and shot him. And I think killed him.
I can't remember.
I can't remember, but it was something like that.
That book was so just completely shitbat bonker nuts. It was
I
great.
can't imagine writing a book like that as a pantser. I don't know that I could do it justice. I don't know that I could, even in editing, I don't know that I could do it justice.
You can't. I think, and of course, you know, who the hell am I? And I don't know the guy, but I would imagine that he had an idea at the beginning that that was what he was doing. I mean, that was the whole conceit of the book. So at least then it was good to keep track of. He made the right ways to keep track of it and everything else. But yeah, when you get to the final quarter of that book, it's insanity.
Shit's going bad
I mean, it is
fast.
utter insanity. You can't breathe.
Well, yeah, that was one of the problems they had. That destroyed Site B, I think.
Yeah. So anyway, you know, it's just like in Stargate. I never watched the TV series much, but the one episode I kind of caught was they'd opened the Stargate to a world that was being eaten by a black hole.
That'll end your day pretty
That
fast.
was kind of a bad thing, and they couldn't close the gate, so it was gradually sucking in our world into it. And in the Tommyknockers, Stephen King has one of the characters mention the fact that the Tommyknockers accidentally, once upon a time, opened a portal on a star and baked 90% of the planet in the process because they didn't know what was on the other side.
There was there's a series of books called the Family Business, the Family Trade, I think it is, where certain individuals are capable of stepping between realities.
Okay.
And they don't really understand how it works at the beginning of this, but in part of the story plot, they find an alternate version of Earth where there's apparently nobody there. And the weather's a little bit screwed up, and they find a technological site that's been long destroyed that had an open portal leading to what used to be a space station in orbit, they thought, with the gate stuck open.
Whoops.
Sucking the air in. They find out later that that wasn't to orbit around that planet. It was in orbit around another version of Earth that had been hit with a weapon that turned it into a black hole. There was nothing there.
Wow.
Okay. It was a stable platform because it was held by the place that opened the gateway. It wasn't affected by the gravity, but if you went through, your ass was toast.
This is why you always send the drone in first.
They did exactly that. It woke something up.
Okay, well, that's also a bad thing.
Sometimes it's best not to look at it. I'd have to look up who the author was, but he's the one that did the Laundry Files. Charlie Strauss.
Okay.
He's an excellent author. The Laundry Files, if you haven't read the Laundry Files, you absolutely should, because it's about eldritch horrors and a secret organization in Britain that fights the eldritch horrors called the Laundry. That's what their secret thing is. So it's like a combination of spies and bureaucracy and
this
poking
almost
fun
sounds
at
like
everything.
Necroscope.
Maybe. I'd have to look and see if that's part of the series.
That's Brian Lumley, I think, is the author of that.
I'm not a horror guy, but I've read 2/3 of Charles Stross's Laundry Files books. I think
Okay.
it starts with I'd have to look it up. But if you haven't read them, you absolutely should, because they are right up your alley. You would laugh your ass off.
The ridiculousness of having to sign out 10 forms in triplicate to get this doomsday weapon from the rack so we can use it on the enemy that's about to kill us. And you want me to fill out the paperwork?
So you've read it.
No, I'm just saying I can already
I
read what
am
you
literally
kinda said.
telling you that something very much like that happened. You think you're being funny, but
No,
that is pretty much the way that works.
I have read enough British literature in my lifetime to know that's exactly how that works. That's exactly how that works. You know, guy loses a leg. We got to fill out a form for the leg cleanup. We got to fill. Hey, stop bleeding all over the floor.
The first book is called The Atrocity Archives.
The Atrocity what?
Archives.
Archives. Okay. Oh, that's
And just because I'm going to amuse you with reading the blurb here, because I think you would like it. Bob Howard is a low-level techie working for a super secret government agency. While his colleagues are out saving the world, Bob's under the desk restoring lost data. His world is dull and safe, but then he went and got noticed. Now Bob is up to his neck in spycraft, parallel universes, dimension-hopping terrorists, monstrous elder gods, and the end of the world. Only one thing is certain: it will take more than a full system reboot to sort this mess out. And it's hilarious.
Oh, you know, you can just
and
imagine.
Creepy and horrible at the same time.
You can just imagine basically alien creatures coming to Earth, well, you know, to just use us as their battleground, or, you know, this just happened to be a good place to have a last stand for one of the species. Yeah.
That's some of those themes are present in those books. I think it's up to like 10 books at this point.
Oh, good Lord.
If you haven't read it, you should indulge
So
yourself and allow them to recommend it to you.
What you're telling me is the first book doesn't quite cover everything.
The first book just opens the door to show you the possibilities.
Look at all the batshit crazy we'll be covering the next 10 books.
And then it gets so crazy, you're like, I never saw that coming. What do you mean Nazis? What do you mean undead alien Nazis on the moon? What the fuck is that shit?
I think the multiverse is drunk. I think the multiverse has been smoking some Panama Red. That's what I think.
It's definitely very British in its humor.
Oh yeah. How could it not be? How could it not be?
But Charlie Strauss is also the one that wrote the family archive stuff, the family business stuff that I was talking about.
Okay. All right. Well, I will put that on my list. I was going to ask you, how much detail would you have to put in to give somebody the background of that kind of stuff, of the kind of insanity that is already there, present at the very beginning of the story or in the world?
You have to start small. Something like that is done by small steps. You can't just yank the curtain back and have everything there, or you're going to overwhelm the reader. You've got to have it let out in dribs and drabs so that they can become accustomed to the change.
Terry doesn't like it when Godzilla storms on the screen at the beginning of the film.
Go, 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 Godzilla.
Because you've shot your wad. What are you going to do now?
Destroy Tokyo, of course.
Okay, Blue Oyster Cult, let's go. I got Don't Fear the Reaper stuck in my skull. This is not going to go well. Not going to go well.
You've got to go through these. If you're going to introduce something like that, like say the Laundry Files, it doesn't start off with him discovering all the horrible things that are out there trying to eat them. It starts with one thing that's unusual.
To three things.
Which leads to something else that hooks your curiosity. And he knows he shouldn't be looking, but he just can't help himself. He's got to go see what that next thing is. And before you know it, you've stepped a little too far down that path and there is no turning back.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, little details that push the story along. Even if you don't come back to them, you do come back to them, whatever. Those are important if you're going to do, serious world building. If you're trying to make something that isn't here, isn't now. I think that's extremely important. I know that there are fantasy authors out there who will change the configuration of what the horse has, accoutrement wise, with saddles and everything else, to indicate a period of medieval whatever, or so
Stirrups
horse.
or lack thereof.
Yeah, something horse people would know about that I don't. Same thing with knight armor and all that kind of stuff. Some people can actually place what time in history that was based on the way the suit of armor is described.
Somebody had a picture of that on Facebook just the other day, where it had a picture of two people. I think it was from the Good and Evil TV series, Good Omens, that they
Okay.
had the two of them standing there in armor saying, "This is the 5th century," and somebody going, "Bullshit. Not with that armor, you're not."
These are angels. What do they know about it in demons? What do they care about armor styles?
I want their shoulder pads, though, made them look manly.
Oh, of course, you got to have that. These are angels. These are rough and tumble angels getting ready to go kick some ass.
I can't wait to see what they're going to do with season 2 with that, since there was no season 2 in the books.
No, there wasn't, and I have no idea. But there's a lot that can be done there. There's still a lot of ground to cover if they want to write more stories in that area. There's a lot there.
I saw the trailer for Altered Carbon season 2 today.
Oh yeah,
Looking forward to it.
seen
Comes out February 27th.
it.
10 episodes dropping on you. I know what I'm going to be doing.
Oh, I know what I'll be doing too. Not sleeping, because I'll be pushing a whole bunch of stuff into production.
Lucky you.
Don't I look enthused? I look enthused, don't I?
You need a nap.
I need more. I need lots of naps. I need lots of naps. And I need the weather to get cool again. This is bullshit.
It's like mid 70s today. We're like, what the fuck is this?
78 degrees. What the hell? It's February, for Christ's sake. The beginning of February.
Welcome to Texas.
And I think tomorrow or Thursday it's going to be down to 37. It's almost exactly the opposite, or the palindrome of it. That mean palindrome?
No, a palindrome is a repeating sort of thing, backwards and forwards, the same.
Yeah.
No, it's no.
There's a word for that. 733 inverse.
Inverse.
Doesn't
Yes,
matter.
that's
Anyway,
the word you're looking for.
regardless,
Let's drag back to the subject. Is there
I
any
want
closing words that you got?
a note right here that you are the one that dragged us off topic that time. So
If you say so,
continue.
I don't even remember. So it's entirely possible. But do you have any closing thoughts on being subtle in your work?
I think when you're going back and editing, you will realize that something is ham-fisted. If it is ham-fisted, then you need to go back and figure out how to make it un-ham-fisted. And the easiest way to do that is to give us a little hint of what's going to come before that. That's just the right way to do it. Unless you're writing something that is completely off the wall, you just need to have some kind of explanation or detail, or something needs to be introduced earlier. If you're going to suddenly have it be part of the reveal, it needs to have been introduced earlier.
I think one of the things that you could do is, if you're not sure if you're being subtle enough in something, have someone else read the part that you're looking at.
Yeah, that works.
See if it beats them over the head. Because we get close to our work and sometimes we think we're being subtle and we are not.
Yeah, I could
Other times we're a lot more subtle than we should be about something, and they're like, "What just happened here?"
Yeah, I mean, I could give you a whole treatise on why soul-fed is integrated and sex isn't a big deal between people who work together, and all the ways the norms, mores, and taboos have changed Would you give a shit? Not really. So how do I explain that things just work differently? I just have them think differently about it.
You know what you should have had done? Instead of having, it be different that way, you should have a sex lottery where it's just random people being thrown together for sex. Doesn't
I
matter who you are. It's somebody else. It's like
I
the
could do
like
that
this
in signal
it's
decay.
like
I
the
actually
sex officer comes along and goes, Martin, Bieber, you two tonight. What? I don't even like what?
And bring me a bottle of wine while you're at it. It's a three-way.
Just have somebody random, like a bureaucrat assigning who's having sex with who. It's like a duty roster.
That needs to be part of a human repopulation project book.
It totally does.
That's what that is. That is what that is. Got 15 guys and 5 women. Oh, this is gonna be tough.
Oh, no, you got to have it the other way around because
I know. I
then
know.
somebody's going
That's
to be
the
wore out.
problem.
You're going to have to up the performance level, sport. You've got to repopulate
Another
the human species. There's
another
20 women,
fut
and you get busy.
another Futurama episode I have just got to send you. I have just got to send you. Snoo Snoo. Once you see what the Snoo Snoo is all about, you will never forget the term, and you will never be able to unsee this. Ever.
Thank you so
Ever.
much.
You're gonna laugh your ass off. It is so damn funny. Uh if you have not seen that episode, patrons and listeners and viewers, you need to go see it. Snoo Snoo. Just go Google it. It'll probably come up with just one scene, and that's the only one you need. Anyway, we cover everything?
I think we have. We've certainly planted the seed, subtly speaking.
No, we're pretty overt. We were pretty overt in our subtlety.
So, folks, if you want to send us a note to tell us how unsubtle we were, send an email to show@deadrobotsociety.com. If you'd like to talk to Paul on Twitter, he is Paul_E_Cooley. You can find us on Facebook at the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group. If you want to hear the audio, you can thank the good folks at podhoster.com who host all of our audio. If you want to see our ugly bugs, you can go to youtube.com/DRS podcast. And of course, we've got the good folks at Patreon, where you can support us for as little as $1 a month and get exclusive content, like our way behind live shows that we need to do another one.
Yep.
And if you are a $10 supporter, you get your name read on air, like Paul has up right now.
And our $10 patrons are Andrew Smallwood, JD Barker, Chris Winder, Drew Angry Fiesta Rodan. Dude, help me out here, man. It's been months. Tell me.
Is the fiesta ever going to end?
That's my question. Cheryl Winters, Nathan Cosby, Rick Pinched Nerves. Ooh, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that. Isabel Cushy, Veronica Jaguar, and Tony L. Joy. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the show. We appreciate it.
We do appreciate it deeply. Thank you, folks. And with that, we are out of here for this week, and we will see you next week.
Next week. It seems so far away. And yet it'll be here tomorrow.
Yesterday.
And I still won't have gotten any goddamn
all
work
my
done.
troubles seem so far away.
I wish I knew the lyrics so I could sing along with you, but I really don't care for the Beatles much, so it never, never crossed my mind. Anyway,
leprosy.
I'll prepare
all
myself
my parts
for the
are
hate
falling
mail
off
of that
of
comment.
me.
There's not much left to see.
Oh, I have got leprosy.
Bye.